Panel is here. It is Wisconsin primary week, so we flew in one of the smartest reporters from the state, Charles Benson, from our local affiliate there, WTMJ in Milwaukee. Helene Cooper, Pentagon correspondent for the New York Times, is also here. Amy Walter, editor of the Cook Political Report, and David Brooks, columnist for the New York Times. Welcome all. Charles, I'll start with you. All right. On the ground, is this looking as bad for Trump as the polls say it is?
Well, clearly he had a bad week, but the anti-Trump forces were already going at him. You know, they knew that they were going to come into Wisconsin and make Wisconsin their Waterloo. But what they found out when they got there, the ground troops were already there, especially with conservative talk radio. I mean, they have been hammering him locally. Local conservative talk radio, been hammering him for weeks. But also you have to keep in mind, Scott Walker, Paul Ryan. All right, Scott Walker's endorsed Ted Cruz. Paul Ryan hasn't endorsed anybody. But clearly, those two guys, their brand of politics has been really big-time conservative issues.
And they've won.
And they've won.
Yeah, so they have something to be happy about in Wisconsin.
They
right?
do. And so they, when they look at that brand of politics, that works better than what the Trump brand of politics is right now.
All right, David, we've been here, I want to say 4 weeks ago. You were convinced Trump wasn't going to get the nomination. 2 weeks ago, you wanted to say you were convinced, but you weren't comfortable saying it anymore. Right. Where are you today?
Morally defeated.
Yeah.
You know,
something's changed, though.
Yeah, something has changed. I mean, all these people keep waiting for him. When is he going to turn into a philosopher king? It's time he should become Abraham Lincoln. He's Donald Trump. He's, you know, it's all aggression. It's all ignorance. It's all the time. But I think he's going to have a bad week this week. I think he'll probably rally in New York, and it'll all come down to, like, the California. The people in the Republican Party are not going to stop him. Look at that Reince Priebus interview today. Yeah. Like, we had the week that we had with Donald Trump, he's a catastrophe for the party. Priebus is off in la-la land talking about technical stuff and not really seizing the mantle. That's where the Republican establishment, so they're not going to beat him. The only way he gets beat is if he internally collapses and if his supporters morally collapse because of bad defeats in places like California and New York. They're like Oklahoma at the end of the Villanova game. There's nothing there. But nobody's going to take it away from him.
You think David's right? Or I feel as if, though, something changed. I mean, you look at what's happening on the ground in the technical parts of this, right, where you have Tennessee party chair making sure he's putting party operatives into the delegate slots, even in the Trump seats, that they're at least seeding this so that they can stop Trump if they have the opportunity.
Here's where Republicans are right now. They get to decide if they want to have a civil war if Trump wins or a civil war if Trump loses. There is no winner out of this whole fight. So he can either come in to Cleveland with the amount of delegates. I think Wisconsin will tell us whether or not he will be able to get 1237. He loses Wisconsin by a big amount. I don't think he's going to be able to make that up. Probably very close. Or we go to Cleveland and we have another civil war where, yeah, technically they could take it away from him. This is how it works. Reince isn't incorrect. The delegates select who the president is. But there are going to be a whole bunch of Republicans very upset about it, even people who didn't vote for Donald Trump, because they see, as you pointed out, is this fair? Is this fair? And that is going to just split this party apart. And anybody who thinks that Donald Trump's just going to go away if he loses this, like, oh, well, he's not going to be able to get on a ballot. He's got Twitter and he's got cable TV, and he's going to spend all of his time there.
Helene, I'm curious, you know, he's talked a lot about NATO this week in weird ways. He's talked a lot about nukes and nuclear policy. I'm just curious, what do the folks at the Pentagon think? And I'm not talking about the political operatives. I'm talking about the career folks who are going to be there if Trump's elected president or if Clinton's elected president.
No, they were appalled. You know, last week I was on a Navy cruiser in the South China Sea that was doing this diplomatic dance with China. We had a Chinese ship that was trailing us. And several times I got into conversations with sailors about, you know, this is all about how we, how we strategize in a really important area. Could Donald Trump even handle something like this? And then you had this week with Donald Trump's messages about, and what he said about South Korea and Japan, which the Japanese prime minister immediately recanted or dismissed. And you had that juxtaposed against President Obama's Washington Nuclear Summit, in which you had heads of states from all over the world sitting here carefully talking about nuclear disarmament and how do we go about doing it. And I just think when you look at all of the things that happened to Donald Trump this week, and the abortion issue was horrible for him, but I think the nuclear issue, ends up scaring people, particularly at the Pentagon and the national security apparatus, a whole lot more.
All right. If Trump falls, though, the beneficiary is Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz if Ted Cruz wins Wisconsin, Charles, is it because there are a whole bunch of Cruz Republicans, or is he really benefiting from Stop Trump right now?
Well, I think he's benefiting from the Stop Trump right now. Clearly, it's getting late to get to the dance, and they were looking for a dance partner, and Ted Cruz was the guy.
Yeah, why Cruz and not Kasich, though? Some of us would have thought Kasich might fit the state better.
When you look at the matchup from Kasich, you would think he would match what the conservative brand would be in Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin's pretty conservative right now. Got the conservative governor, got a conservative legislature. They control both houses, and they have a conservative high court. He got the backing, Kasich, of the former governor, Tommy Thompson, who's won there 4 times. But I think they felt that Cruz, when they were looking at the difference between Cruz and Kasich, they were saying, who can beat Trump? How can we get to the convention with a guy? And they felt Ted Cruz was the guy.
David Brooks, what do you most likely think is going to happen now? Is it Trump, Cruz, or Paul Ryan?
I think it's likely to be Trump. I think he's the walking dead. I think he'll get the nomination, and he will just go down to a crushing defeat. And will be known for 100 years from now. People will say, well, who was the biggest loser in American politics? And it won't be McGovern, it won't be Dukakis, the word Trump. And I hope when he's down there in Hades, he's aware of all that.
Wow. Well,
Very subtle.
There is subtle. Why do I have a feeling Mr. Brooks is going to hear from Mr. Trump sometime on social media today? Anyway, with that, we'll take a pause. When we come back, down ballot blues. We're going to stick with Wisconsin as a theme. What does Donald Trump at the top of the ticket mean for Republicans further down? We'll be right back.